Reading from the book of Ezra, chapter 1, verses 1 to 6. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and also put it in writing. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you of all his people, may his God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and rebuild the house of the Lord, the God of Israel. He is the God who is in Jerusalem. And let each survivor, in whatever place he sojourns, be assisted by the men of his place with silver and gold, with goods and with beasts, besides freewill offerings for the house of God that is in Jerusalem. Then rose up the heads of the fathers' houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, everyone whose spirit God had stirred to go up to rebuild the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem. And all who were about them aided them with vessels of silver, with gold, with goods, with beasts, and with costly wares, besides all that was freely offered. In 1947, a Bedouin shepherd boy was searching for his lost goat in the rugged cliffs near the Dead Sea. Seeing a cave, he tossed a stone into it. Unexpectedly, he heard the sound of breaking pottery. Going in to investigate, he became the one to discover one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hidden for nearly 2,000 years, these ancient manuscripts contained invaluable texts of the Hebrew scriptures, shedding light on a period of Jewish history that had been largely forgotten. Just as those scrolls revealed a connection between the past and the present, the book of Ezra bridges the period of Israel's history between the exile and the restoration, reminding us that God's purposes transcend generations. The book of Ezra picks up where the Chronicles leave off, with the decree of King Cyrus of Persia that permitted the Jewish exiles to return to their homeland and rebuild the destroyed house of the Lord. For 70 years, the people of Judah had been captives in Babylon, uprooted from their land because of their disobedience to God. The books of Chronicles were written to encourage the returning exiles, tracing the origins of Israel and Judah in God's covenant with Abraham, and the beginning of David's kingdom, which was to last forever. Many of them had never set foot in Jerusalem or seen the splendor of the temple. Their sense of belonging was fragile, and their faith had been tested by years of exile. The Chronicles and the book of Ezra reminded them of their divine heritage and called them to rebuild not just the temple and the city, but their identity as God's chosen people. The return from exile unfolded in stages over nearly a century. In 586 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had destroyed Jerusalem, razing the temple and carrying off its sacred treasures. But in 539 BC, Cyrus overthrew Babylon, and the following year he issued a decree allowing the Jewish exiles to return. Ezra chapters 1 to 6 describe the first wave of return led by Zerubbabel and the priest Jeshua. The journey was not an easy one. The Jewish community had become fragmented. Some had remained in Jerusalem during the exile, while others had been scattered throughout Babylon. Those returning hardly knew their land. Only the elderly among them carried faint memories of the former glory of their nation. Even though the book bears Ezra's name, he does not appear until chapter 7. The initial return was orchestrated by others, pioneers who answered the call before him. The Lord stirred the heart of King Cyrus to set this restoration in motion. Astonishingly, Isaiah, in chapter 44 and 45, had named Cyrus as God's chosen instrument 150 years before his birth. This pagan king, unaware of Israel's God until then, was nevertheless his appointed shepherd and anointed one. It is likely that Daniel, an old statesman in the Persian court, played a role in this stirring. Perhaps he showed Cyrus the prophecies of Jeremiah, which foretold Babylon's fall and Israel's return after 70 years. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 8 to 13, 29, verses 10 to 14. Whatever the reason, the Cyrus did not merely allow the Jews to return, he actively supported their mission. He commanded his subjects to assist them with silver, gold, goods, and livestock. Most remarkably, he entrusted to them the sacred vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple, objects once desecrated in Babylon, now to be sanctified again for God's purposes. This was more than political benevolence, it was divine orchestration. God can use anyone to accomplish his will. The opportunity to return had miraculously been provided, yet only a small fraction of Jewish population chose to return. After 70 years in Babylon, many had grown comfortable. They had built homes, established businesses, and assimilated into Persian society. The journey back was long and arduous. The destination, a city in ruins, offered no comfort, prestige, or profit. Isaiah 10:22 foretold that only a remnant would return, and it was the faithful remnant who believed God's promises and took the step of faith. Indeed, those who did needed encouragement. They would have to rebuild everything from scratch: homes, roads, farms, trade, defenses, and most importantly, the temple. This scene clearly demonstrates that God's program continues, whether we choose to be part of it or not. The majority did not ever return to the land God had given Abraham's people as an eternal inheritance. They had struck roots deep into the land of their oppressors. They lived by what they saw, not by the invisible reality. However, the faithful minority heard their shepherd's voice. These were the ones who were joyfully content to trade comfort for obedience, give up everything for the privilege of being part of God's program. And their faithfulness bore fruit. Though Israel continued to struggle with sin, one thing changed permanently after the exile. They never relapsed into idolatry again. The painful lesson of Babylon had been learned, and their devotion to the one true God remained steadfast. The timing of their return was no accident or human plan. The exiles knew the words of the prophets. They recognized the fulfillment of Jeremiah's prophecy and Isaiah's mention of Cyrus. They saw God's hand at work and longed to be part of his larger plan. Let us too discern God's work in our time and respond with faith. There comes a moment in every believer's life when God calls us out of our comfort zones to be part of something greater than ourselves. The choice to obey is rarely easy. It may require leaving behind security, familiarity, or success by the world's standards. But the reward of participating in God's unfolding plan far outweighs any sacrifice. William Carey, the father of modern missions, understood this well. When he felt called to take the gospel to India, many around him discouraged him. They told him that if God wanted to save the heathen, he would do so without Carey's help. Yet, Carey refused to be passive. His motto was, expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. Despite the hardships, Carey sailed for India and spent his life serving God, obedient in faith to the divine mission. The returning exiles of Ezra's day, like William Carey, stepped into the unknown with faith in order to fulfill God's eternal plan. They laid the foundation of a nation that recognized only the Lord. Their obedience set the stage for future generations to worship the Lord in Jerusalem. God's plans are unfolding in our generation, just as they were in Ezra's time. Let us step forward in faith and courage, leaving our excuses and fears behind, abandoning our selfish comforts to seek the kingdom of God. Let us be part of the faithful, though small, remnant, for whom the unseen is real and the seen is a mere mist. For when we follow God's leading in faith, He goes before us and with us, preparing the way and fulfilling His plan. God bless.